Okay, we are now recording. So just want to remind everyone that our big purpose here is to care for patients with HIV and other disease states and really to embed QI in our DNA. So I want to start out this morning with an icebreaker, and we've got some polling. So we'll get started with that. Okay, so here's your first poll. In which month is the weather the best to visit Harare? So tell me which month is better to visit Harare. Oh, I've got votes for October. Oh, now I've got votes for June. I've got votes for every month. So let's see how the polling goes. So 57% of people have voted. 71% have voted. All right, so 78% of people have voted. So we're going to end the poll at this time. And the winner is, October. October. You all say that October is the best time. And I have a reason for asking this question, because Katie and I and Julie are missing Zimbabwe. And we really look forward to the time when we would be able to travel back and see you all in person, face to face. We might have masks, I don't know, but we really look forward to that. So October, probably be 2021 at this point. All right, so we've got another poll this morning. All right. The question is, how often do you use quality improvement tools or the skills that you've learned in your work life? How often do you use the quality improvement tools and skills in your work life? So 25% of people have voted. Today's going to be very interactive. We're going to ask you to comment and comment in the chat box, open your mic. We hope to have a lot of interaction today. All right, so 76%, we're going to end our poll and share our results. So 77%, 10 of you say you use these daily in your work life. 15% say weekly, and 8% says monthly. So that is absolutely fabulous. The winner is daily. And I have a reason for asking this. We're going to have another webinar next week on August 5. And potentially, this is just a little teaser, potentially we'll have someone who will share a quick QI project, at least maybe how they got it set up. They might not have results yet, but a quick QI project about how you can use the QI in a quick example in your work life to help you deal with any problems. So fabulous. All right. And then we have one more icebreaker poll this morning. We're getting rolling. We want everyone to feel like they're part of the participation. So, how often does the LARC faculty and your project management team review and use the feedback collected in those post-webinar surveys to improve future webinars? So what do you think? How often do we use the information that we've gained from those surveys to improve future webinars? All right. 40% have voted. You guys are awake this afternoon. 50% have voted. All right. 60%. Okay, we seem to have stopped at 60%. But let's end the poll and sharing the results. So occasionally, frequently, and very often. So frequently won out. 58% of you think we use it frequently. 25% of you think we use it very often. And 17% of you think we use it occasionally. So there's a reason that I'm asking this polling question. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to remind you that today we are actually going to focus on some of those results from your survey. Our last webinar was July 8th, and we received some feedback. And here's what you told us. You told us that you wanted us to develop an evaluation guide for the presentations to assist participants on what to critique. So there you have it. An idea came to mind, and here it is. An evaluation guide is born. Now, how many of you received the evaluation guide earlier today in your email? Can you just type into the chat box, yes, if you received the QI project evaluation guide? Like to know how many folks have received that. So let's look at the chat box. Now I can't see the chat box, but if someone, Katie or Julie, if you all can look in the chat box, how many people say they have received, or you can just hold it up if you're on video.
Five people say yes. The Fortunate said that she sent it to everyone.
Awesome, awesome. So I hope you've had a chance to at least open the email and download it and take a look at it, because we're going to be using it today. So if you have any opportunity to print this off, mine's in black and white, but if you have any opportunity to print this off, go ahead and do that, because we're going to use it today. So here's the tool, but let's see how we can use it to actually critique one of the PowerPoints. Before we do that, though, on our agenda, and I did forget, we did have an opportunity for a message from our LARC PMT. So I'll leave you there, and we'll listen to our LARC PMT, Fortunate and Japhet. We'll have some information to share.
Okay, morning and afternoon to you, everyone. I'll go first. So my discussion is on the data submission rate, as well as the response rate in terms of submission of PowerPoint presentation. So far, we have received, I think, 3 presentation out of the 15 participating facilities. And I have been in touch with some of the facilities in Harare, and they assured me that they needed an extension up to Friday. They are still working on the presentation. Unfortunately, I haven't heard from the Kitungwiza counterpart facilities in terms of their progress. I've been in touch with the attending clerks in Kitungwiza in terms of their data. They are almost up to date as of June. But in terms of presentations, I haven't received anything. Then the same applies to the laboratory. I've only received a presentation from PSI Lab Chungwiza, but the one for VRIDH and NMR are still outstanding. But let me acknowledge the facilities that you have submitted, Budiriro, PSI, and Epworth. But let me also highlight that I think some of the issues that Katie and Barbara raised in the commented PowerPoint presentation is also, being repeated in the presentations that have been submitted. So with your permission, Katie and Barbara, I think it would be good for the national guys to also review the presentation before we forward them to you. There are some sites which are still using column graphs as opposed to the ranchers that we discussed. So the tools that we discussed that are supposed to be used for our collaborative are not being effectively used. So I think there's need for us to review. Lastly, in terms of, we have two central hospitals, Parenyatwa and Chitungwiza. I think there have been quite a number of problems that they are facing to do with industrial action. Uh, there are issues to do with flexi hours where they are knocking off at 1 o'clock and so forth. So they haven't been doing much in terms of implementation of CLI. I've been in touch with the coaches as well as the facility teams, but they are finding it difficult to implement, as well as even in terms of data collection, they haven't been sending data. So I think those are the two facilities that we are kind of struggling with. I know I've seen Nicholas is also on the call. I think he can also, share the same sentiments with Parrenya. So I think we would need to speak with the PMT and try to find ways of how best we can, handle the two facilities. But I think for the other facilities, they will submit data. But we have the deadline for data submission. It hasn't been moved. It was the 24th of July. So for all the facilities that are still to share their presentation, please do so because we really want to use them in terms of informed implementation of CLI. Over.
Thank you, Javed. I appreciate that update. And did anyone have any questions for Javed about that? Okay, waiting the appropriate 7 seconds. I don't hear anything, so I will turn the time over to Fortunate.
Okay, let me try to share my screen.
I fortunate. Fortunate.
I'm trying to share, I'm trying to look for my document. Please just continue with something else while I put my, down.
Okay, well, we can come back to that. Thank you. So it looks like we have 27 participants online now, so that's awesome. Thank you all for joining us. All right, so let's go back to a reminder of our agenda, and we'll hear from Fortunate later on. And I will go ahead with the our little knowledge burst today is how to critique a QI project, and then we'll actually begin critiquing a QI project. So I want to remind you that the expected outcomes are to be able to use this QI project evaluation checklist that we sent to provide a critique of a QI project. And then by critiquing someone else's project, I think you'll learn better how to improve your own project. So that's really the expected outcome and the goals for today. And just a reminder, this is based on information that we received in the feedback. So please keep that feedback coming. We really do appreciate that. And we use it to design and change our next webinars. We've always encouraged everyone to take a look at other people's QI project to provide a critique and then ask questions based on that when presenters are presenting. So here we go for today. So this is an actual presentation, but we've removed all identifying data. So this will be from Wakanda West. And I'm going to come out of slideshow mode so we'll be able to see the comment pane. So I want you to grab that QI project evaluation, and we'll look at the very first item on the list, and it's facility information. So here's some guidance about how to look at this facility information. So we just really want to be sure, does this data make sense? Do the numbers seem to match throughout the project? Do they work well? So the question that we had when we originally saw this data is just a quick calculation. It looks like only about 1/3 of your patients, of these patients, would have been eligible for a viral load. Just a quick estimate, 1,500 out of 4,800. So we had a question about that. And wouldn't more of your patients be past the 6-month window and be eligible for viral load? And then this viral load coverage number, it says 67% here, and we'll look for consistency throughout the report. So take a brief look at those numbers and see if they make sense. Does it make sense that only 1/3 of the patients would be eligible for viral load? So those are questions that you can ask as
Barbara,
you're
can I chime in?
Yes, please.
So related to this, another confusion that I had was that, so if you 2/3, 67% coverage out of 1,500 viral eligible people, that's you have, so basically 1,000 people is covered. And you collect 500 samples per month. So within 2 months, you cover all your 1,000 patients, you know. So it's just like, it's just that doesn't make sense to me, perhaps because these numbers come from different time frame. Maybe one is weekly, another one is monthly. So it's just not very clear to me. I just have questions. Over.
Thank you, Katie. So again, when people present, we want all of us to have questions, right? If we have a question or a concern, so we would want to ask, what time frame are these numbers from? And you know, how do these numbers all work together? Do they make sense together? And then as we move to the next slide, we have been given a time frame. So this would have been for November, December, and January. So we're being told that 1,056 patients were viral load eligible during these 3 months. So again, maybe the time frame on the other one is a little bit different. But here, when you look at the viral load coverage, we've got a number. But probably usually viral load coverage is done in percentage, right? So it looks like you would divide 584 by 1056, and that would be roughly half, right? Half would be your coverage. So again, just trying to make sense out of that number. And then our next slide talks about the team. So take a look at your QI project evaluation, and what does it say here about team? We want to know if you've identified the team members, if they know who they are, and you've identified their team responsibilities, not necessarily their job description, but what role do they serve in the team? Are they the data person? Are they the team lead? So those are questions we'd want to have about the team, and those seem to have been answered here. And then we come to the story of our project. And in this case, we see 4,486 clients. So has anyone noticed a difference in the numbers? Here we have 4,486 clients. Here we have 4,468 clients. Perhaps they turned it around. And here we have 4,800 clients. So it's not a huge deal, but again, if you're making this presentation, you'd like all those numbers to be consistent, congruent. You'd like the same information to be seen throughout the presentation. Okay, so let's move to the project summary slide. And here, if you'll pull out your QI project evaluation, we're going to ask that the overall goal, the aim statement, and the intervention, which this one does not have yet, would all be related to the same problem statement. So here they have a split out there to the 2 aim statements. And the intervention, if it was there, we'd like a clear, concise description of it. So keep in mind these numbers, because we'll be looking at them as we get more into the data. Okay, so the elevator speech, we won't discuss that anymore, but let's move on to the process map. Now there's some important questions under define about the process map. Could someone unmute themselves and read the questions that you'd want to ask about a process map. Is there anyone who can unmute themselves and read on this guide, on this checklist, what we need to look at in the process map?
Yeah, Liberty. Yeah.
Hi, Liberty. Go for
Hi,
it.
how are
Thank you.
I'm okay, thanks. So for the process map, number one, sufficient detail showing understanding of current process. Number two, process table and process map, visual. I think there's something in brackets, visual. Then number three, clearly identified opportunities for improvement. Number four, all opportunities for improvement included in the action plan, whether related to the main aim or not. That's all we have for the process map.
Okay, thank you, Liberty. So while you're there, would you want to weigh in on those aspects related to the current process map that you see?
It's open to everyone, is it?
It's
Okay.
open to everyone. Yes, Liberty, it's open to everyone. We're not going to put you on the spot.
Okay. Let me
What
just
about
see.
sufficient detail?
Sufficient differential understanding. So I'm just trying to look at the process map, because we remember we have the table as well with the
Right.
details. So for this one, if we say results received from lab and the results in improvised bleeding register and right code number of results. So I'm just.
So it's a little hard to just, and that's the other point. It's a little hard to just comment on a presentation when you're seeing it for the first time. So it's always good to have an opportunity to sit down and maybe look at the presentation a little bit in advance and understand. That's why we've asked for your presentations in advance. So we have more time to look at them in detail and kind of understand what's going on. So, you know, typically there would be more steps, right? Maybe up to 20 steps in a normal process, you know, tracing from the time the patient is bled until the results are back and the care is given. So we'd probably like to see more steps here, but I'll move on. And we have the table as well. So that checks off one of our boxes, right? And we have the table here. Anyone maybe notice anything about the steps? Any comment about the steps in the table? See anything that catches your eye? So Katie and I commented on this one that anytime you have these multiple steps, you probably need to split them out a bit more. Anytime you have a different person performing a step, you'd want to split that out more as well. Why spend so much time talking about the process map and getting the details? Type into the chat box, why do you think we want the details in this process map? And I'll have to rely on
So
someone else.
Barbara, just monitoring the chat box, Romana was saying, Barbara, seems like you are switching the slides too fast. It's difficult to read the table.
Okay, okay. And again, you know, I think we don't have time today to read all the details in the table. But I think the point that I kind of jumped out at me was that there's a lot of people involved in this same step, and there's a lot of steps within this step. So maybe we would split those out into unique steps and understand them a little bit better. But thank you, Romana. I will leave it here for a minute. Good feedback. So why are we concerned about the detail in the first process map? Could someone type into the chat box or open your mic and answer that for us? Why is it so important to get those details, to capture them, and to put it in that process map? Has anybody hazarded a guess yet? All right. It doesn't have to be a right answer. Just type something in. Why do you think it's important to get the details right in the process map of the current state? All right. Well, we are going to leave that question on the table. Hopefully someone will chime in there. So we're going to move past the process table. And one other thing I think we want to mention when we get to the several responses in the chat box. Julie, can you read them, please?
Absolutely. So Katie says, you won't necessarily know the problem if you don't map out all the steps of the process. And
Okay.
Liberty says, the details highlight gaps. And Katie said, you don't know what you are doing if you cannot map out all the process. And Agnes says, to identify gaps for improvement. And others say, avoid missing some gaps. And Sonia said to identify the gaps and come up with improvement strategies. Nicholas said to identify opportunities for improvement.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you all. I can't see the chat box when I'm sharing my screen. So fabulous. Exactly. That's why when we went through these presentations, we really made some points about understanding your current process so we can go ahead and identify those opportunities for improvement. So I will ask you, were the opportunities for improvement clearly identified on this process mapping table? So look in this last column, the opportunities for improvement. So yes, they did identify opportunities for improvement. We have often asked that you highlight or circle the ones that you think you can address or the ones that you think are particularly crucial to your problem. But it's good here to see that the opportunities for improvement were identified at each step
So
along the
Barbara, may I suggest, because the text is kind of small, if you can push the line for the left hand side, make those slide thumbnails much smaller. Maybe that will enlarge the, yes, thank you. Thank
Is that
you.
better?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, very good. So we have a guide and we've applied it to the process map. Now let's talk about the problem statement. And I have another poll for you about the problem statement. So get your polling fingers ready. True or false? 15 words is a tool used to create a problem statement. True or false? Got 3% of people have voted. Now you're weighing in. %, 33%. All right, so half of you have voted. So let's go ahead and end the poll. So 12 of you said that is true, and 3 of you said that is false. The correct answer is true.
Barbara, could you share the results?
Oh, sorry. Good idea. Yes. So 80% of you were absolutely correct. 15 words is a tool used to create a problem statement. Remember that workbook that you got? Seems like years ago. But in that workbook, in the project outline talks about the 15 words. And the way you can use 15 words is you all can get together and everybody can say their own problem statement and you can combine them, or you can work together by writing it and people agreeing and disagreeing. So you can get together as a team, and 15 words is just, of course, it could be 17, it could be 13. It's not a magic number, but it tries to keep the problem statement short and sweet and very focused on what you're going to address. And as we remember, the problem statement is very important for driving the whole rest of the project. So, so problem statement. So here's, let's look at the gap or problem statement in our guide. And it says it should be 15 words or less and adequately capture the actual problem addressed by the project. So does this one meet the 15 words criteria? And someone will have to read to me in the chat box. Has anyone chimed in?
Teacher Guru said no.
No, it's a few more. And you know what I think that happened here in this problem statement is they started talking about some reasons, right? Why the problem was occurring. So this is just strictly the problem statement. If you want to talk about reasons, you know, we can do that with the fishbone or whatever. But documentation of viral load results in the patient care book and EAC register. And you might want to state it as a problem, like lack of documentation or minimal documentation or something like that. So we or clearly understand the problem, but you probably just want to leave off the causes here because we'll get to that later. Okay, next slide is about the voice of customer. And we have some information here about the voice of the customer. So I'd love if one other person would open up their mic and chime in and read what we're looking for with the voice of the customer. So feel free to unmute yourself and read to us from the checklist.
Hello.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah, it's written data collection stroke method, questions asked related to problem statements, and summarize results clearly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate you jumping in and reading that for us. So I think the most important one is that we take that problem statement. And I think we had asked you to do the voice of the customer related to the second aim, which would be patients not getting care according to guidelines. And our sub aim was the patients are not returning for their appointments. So that would probably be what you would want to focus on. Just take that problem statement and say, why is this a problem? And figure out the best way to obtain that information from your customer. And in this case, the customer is your patient. And so they talked about some of the ways that they got the information. And they talked about what patients are concerned about. And then the next slide talks about the voice of the customer. We don't actually see the data, but there is some information here about what they learned. So I've got another poll for you around the voice of the customer. So let's switch out to that now. Now launch this poll, and this is asking you specifically about this voice of customer. Does this voice of customer survey, so you're seeing the results, does this voice of customer survey help the team understand why patients are not coming back to the clinic for appointments? And that would be related to sub-aim 2 or missed appointments. So does the information you have here help you understand why patients are not coming back to the clinic for appointments? So I've got 34% of you voting. All right, 57% of you voted, 61%. So I'll go ahead and end the poll. And my, this is like a dead heat. Pretty much half of you said yes, and pretty much half of you said no. So we're gonna have to get interactive here. I know it's a new world with virtual, but if you said yes, can you chime in? You could open your mic or you can type into the chat box. If you said yes, why, or if you said no, I would like one from each side to sort of chime in and tell me why you said yes and why you said no. So I don't have candy, but I can give virtual candy. So chime in and let me know why you said yes. Why do you think this helps understand, or why you said no? What part of this information do you think helps understand why patients are not coming back for their appointments? Is there any comments in the chat box?
No.
No comments. So I know it's a little more difficult over Zoom to just chime in, but we'd love to get your feedback and have this be an interactive session. So if some brave soul would love to chime in. Because the goal really is, yes, you can critique someone else's, but when you're thinking about designing your own voice of customer survey, you need to ask yourself this very same question, right? What, what is my, yes.
Jackie typed into the chat box saying information summarized has nothing documented or missed appointments.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I was in the no camp, honestly, but more people were in the yes camp. So maybe they, see something here that I don't see. But it's a more of a general report, right? The knowledge, the who had viral loads, were they called? So maybe related.
Barbara, we have more typed in the chat box. Would you like me to read out?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So from Liberty, he said 57% did not comment. Sample size too small. Anderson said his answer is yes, because the client is able to give his or her side of understanding from the program, as well as to open up to us healthcare workers.
Okay. Do you want to say more? You want to open your mic and say more?
Barbara, you are able to unmute him too, Anderson.
Yeah, I don't see the participants right now. I am looking at my screen and my poll.
But
so,
if you move your cursor on the top, I think you should be able to.
Yeah, I have to open a new window though to do that. So again, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that you all have used to evaluate this. And again, I think that same thoughtfulness, I hope you'll be able to use when you design your voice of customer survey and you want to know why patients are not coming to clinic. You want to understand, because those reasons are going to be part of your analysis, right?
So Barbara, Sonia, we have another type in the chat box. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
So from Sonia, yes. The answer is yes, because the clients will be able to express themselves and open up some hidden information for us to understand and work to improve services. But I mean, going back to Barbara's point, the aim now is about understanding why people are missing their appointments. We want to understand all those barriers that prevent them from coming to the clinic for their appointment. But those questions doesn't really tell us how to solve that problem. Maybe.
Right. So there may be some hints of it here, but and then we're kind of just given data and I don't see it clearly summarized, like this is what we learned and and here's how we're going to use it. But, you know, they were moving in that direction for sure. And, but I think I would just encourage you, if you want to know why people aren't coming back to clinic, you need to ask that specific question, right? You need to ask, what barriers do you have in coming back to clinic? Maybe you need to just have a focus group. Maybe you need to, you know, like our Survey Monkey, how can you just do that to understand so you can put that into action? And I want to point out that when we get our surveys, it's our own little small PDSA, right? The survey said, help us learn to evaluate, help us learn to critique, provide a tool. So then we do that. So then we present it. Then we ask you, how did that work? I think that you want to have that thinking when you're designing your voice of customer survey. All right, so the measure. And this one is a little bit confusing, but Katie's comment was that the numerator and the denominator were a bit switched around. We need to be clear on what's the numerator and what's the denominator. And here we've got some baseline data. It's a bit confusing because it says 100% and then it says 15%. So just some clarity around that. So this data collection process, I think there's some lessons to be learned here and some feedback that we could share. So let's talk about a data collection tool and data collection sources. So if you'll take a look quickly at your measure, in the measure section, we ask about data source and sample size. Of course, that's important. And then we ask about the baseline data. What are important things to have for the baseline data? So here, I'll just quickly point out the data collection tool. I'm going to switch to the next slide, is something like this, where you're pulling your data together. It could be an Excel spreadsheet. It could be a paper-based form, but it would be where we would be pulling together the data that we've collected. So the green books, the EAC register, that might be the source, the data source. And then our data collection plan. And I've pointed out here in the comments that don't forget about your workbook, right? There are many, many valuable tools right there in that workbook. And in the workbook, it talks about a data collection plan. And that's really talking about going forward. I think this is referring to how you collected your data for the baseline. But we're talking about going forward. How often will you collect the data? Will it be daily, weekly, monthly? And if you're, collecting a weekly, then when is your cutoff? Is it on Thursday or is it on Monday? So these kinds of details about how you're collecting your data. For the time frame is, again, daily, weekly, monthly, not that it took 2 hours to collect the baseline data. Please just always remember that there is a workbook there that tells you exactly what a data collection tool looks like and how you plan for collecting your data going forward. So a little bit tricky. And then here, I think, again, small point, but just a little confusing because here we said 15%. And here we say 16%. So just, again, those things have to be congruent across the entire area. And then the percentages, need to be calculated correctly. So I think that's something that we mentioned as well. So this one here says 16% who had a viral load test done had no test result documented. But I think it's really the opposite. 16% had a test result documented. And this 45%, you know, where did that data come from? And as a coach, you will also want to be really attuned to this as you review these and as you work with your site to put together the presentations, but even to really, you know, get the right information here. So 45% did not have a viral load. And I think Katie points out in her comment that, you know, depending on which numbers you use, the answer would probably be 55% given the numbers that we had on the first slide. So numbers matter and keeping track of them throughout your presentation matters. So let's talk about baseline data. Okay, so here the baseline data was collected. Anybody got a calculator? Let's just look at what our average would be. 23 divided by 150. What percentage is that? Oh, I see someone calculating. Type it in. That would be just a straight average.
15%.
15%, excellent. So again, this one says 16%. Here we see 15%, but maybe there's 100% there. So sort of a small point, but what we really want is everyone understand how you calculate the baseline data, and then those numbers need to be consistent throughout the presentation. So let's just go back for a quick second. What did this say about baseline data? Can someone open up their mic graciously and read for us the checklist on baseline data? What are we looking for?
So I'll go again.
Thank you.
Okay, so for baseline data, at least 6 points, number one. Number two, raw data, numbers included. Number three, percentage calculated correctly. Number four, plotted on a run chart. Number five, integrated into aim statement. Those are the conditions.
Okay, great. So we do have 6 points here, and we do see the raw data. But we don't, there's a run chart a little bit later. So let's skip on down and take a look at this run chart. So I have a polling question for you. And so here's the launching of the poll. What key elements should not be on a run chart? What key elements should not be on a run chart? Okay, 27% of people have voted, 31% of people have voted. All right, 41%. This is what should not be on a run chart. All right, we've got 58%, so we'll go ahead and end our poll. And here are our results. So 4 of you think a data table should not be on a run chart. 9 of you think multiple lines, one for the numerator and one for the denominator. I think the denominator got cut off, should not be on a run chart. 3 of you say at least 6 data points should not be on a run chart. And 1 of you says that one axis related to time should not be on a run chart. And the winner is, the majority is correct in this place. The key element that should not be on a run chart is multiple lines, one for the numerator, one for the denominator. We're really looking to calculate an indicator or a metric. And so when you calculate that metric, you take your numerator, you divide it by your denominator, you multiply it times 100, and you get one number. And that's what needs to be plotted on a run chart. We do want to see a data table on a run chart because if we're confused, if we have questions, we can dig down and divide the numerator and the denominator and come up with the actual metric. We do want at least 6 baseline data points, and one axis is related to time, and that's the x-axis. It gives you the time, and I'll stop sharing. If you notice going across here, this axis is related to time. This is the months. This axis related to time, this axis related to percentage, but the issue here is that we've got multiple lines and we really need to have one line. And Katie graciously created an example of what we'd like to see in a run chart. So we definitely want to see the raw numbers there, the raw data in that chart. We want to see one line. So with the percentage that you've calculated by, again, numerator divided by denominator times 100 will give you that percentage. So we want to see one line, not multiple. And if you put the numbers into Excel and try to make a beautiful sheet, it can mess you up sometimes. It will give you 4 lines. So you have to, Excel's a wonderful tool, but it doesn't always work for you. You have to manipulate it a little bit to get the one line. And then we see the baseline over here, which is 6 data points. That's exactly what we want to see. And then this is the after improvement. We like to see in that run chart the numbers for that as well. So this is what you'd really like to see as you're evaluating and as you're creating your own project data. So let me go back then to, we're talking about the analyze phase. Now, if you look at the analyze phase, there's a list there of things we want to see. And if there's one more brave soul who would not mind opening their mic and reading for us, we will have to interact a little bit differently. It's not the same as being in that auditorium and having a microphone and running around and throwing candy. It's not as fun, I know. But if someone can open up their mic and read for us on the checklist what we're looking for in this analyze phase and how we evaluate that. So just unmute yourself and feel free to read that. And we're happy to have one of the coaches chime in and read as well. Anyone?
I'm going to read.
Thank you, Liberty.
Okay, so we're on the analyze part, is it?
Yes.
Right. So the first thing is the problem statement has to be at the head of the fish, right? Number two, thorough list for each bone of the fish. Number three, includes all data gathered from process map and voice of customer. Number four, clearly identifies cause or causes of the identified problem. Then number five, utilizes at least one or more QI tools. That's for the analyze part.
Perfect. Thank you, Liberty. I appreciate that. I'm sending candy.
Thank you.
So do we see the problem statement at the head of the fish? Not here in this particular slide. And a thorough list for each bone. The process list looks a little lean. That bone doesn't have a lot of meat on it, right? So we'd like to see maybe a little more meat on the process bone, especially since that usually is the biggest bone and one of the hearts of the problem. Katie, tell me what you told me yesterday, that usually the main root causes. You said 3.
Sure. So usually the one common pitfall we have observed in most of the projects presented, root cause analysis presented, was that they stay at pretty superficial. So they didn't really, people don't really get to the root cause. And usually if you have done a thorough root cause analysis, and the root cause typically come out in one of the 3. It's either process, policy, or your tools. So for example, if the problem is that people are not doing certain things like documenting viral results in the Green Book or something like that. So you ask, why is that a problem? Why did that happen? Now, the answer may be, say, they were not trained. So people stop there. They don't keep asking next why. It's like, so why were they not trained? So then the causes may be there's no policy saying that they need to be trained, or there's a policy but there's no process to make sure that training happened. Right now, it's also possible that they were trained but they were not trained well. So why were they not trained well? So then you need to look at the tools, the training. What's wrong with that training? Maybe you need to revise the training, not giving out training, a bad training, and keep training people on bad training tools. So if you have done a good job, usually the problems in the process, policy, or the tools. Over.
Thank you, Katie. So I found that really helpful when Katie and I were talking yesterday about that. So I do see training here, but I don't know if you remember in the example that I shared a couple weeks back, they use the one tool, they use the fishbone, but then they also use the 5 whys. So once they had an issue identified on the fishbone, they took it a bit further and a bit deeper. And I think that's the point that Katie is making. You know, this would typically say you don't have a policy or procedure. And then why don't you? Well, do you not know what the proper policy or procedure is? Or did you not get it from the Ministry of Health or something, you know? So digging down, and I would encourage this person to look more at the process. Again, hearkening back to what we did at the very first with that process map. So there were some opportunities that were identified on that process map. They don't show up here. There were some issues that were identified in the voice of customer. They don't show up here. So make sure you pull everything into this crucial moment of saying, we have a problem, okay? We've identified the problem statement. Why is this a problem? And then that is a beautiful segue into, well, then if this is the underlying cause, then this is what I need to work on. So we will move on from the analyze then. And we're going to look at the impact effort grid. And I don't know if you all remember, it's been a long time, right? But when we did the process mapping, we took sticky notes and we wrote down things that we identified as we walked around. Some of them may have been, you know, part of the big project that we're working on, but others of them may have just been things that we noticed because we actually took the time to walk our process. So we took each one of those little sticky notes and we put it on this impact effort grid. We said, how, what kind of impact would it have? If we could fix this, what kind of impact would it have? And then we ask, how much effort? Is it easy to do or difficult to do? And then we took each sticky note and then we put it in a quadrant. And we captured it. And then we said, if it's just do it, then we're putting it on that action plan. I think one of the just do it's in one of the sites we were said they weren't taking the vital signs, you know, and to monitor the patients who came into the OI art clinic. So that might be a just do it. And that might be something that you could put on there and just do it. But maybe it's not a just do it. Maybe you don't have the tools you need. Maybe you don't have a place to record it. So it depends, right? Whether something is a just do it or not. But I'm going to ask you, I've got another poll for you. You said you liked polls, right? All right, got another poll for you. And this one is about what makes something a just do it. So I'm launching this poll. What makes something a just do it? Select the characteristics of a just do it project. All right, so 27% of you have voted. Appreciate you all voting. It's one way we can be interactive, even though we're over Zoom. %. Okay, we're going to end our poll and I'm going to share my results. Now, can a just do it project be completed in one day? Typically, it's short. Maybe it's 2 days, but typically it's short. So that is correct. Is the solution, quotes, simple? Now, simple and complex are a little bit difficult to define, but would the solution be simple? Maybe someone's already developed a solution, you just need to implement it, and it's a simple solution. So yes, that is correct. Does it involve 1 or 2 people? Yes, it does. Just do it involves just a few people, so it doesn't have a huge impact if it doesn't work. But the correct answer, and 55% of you all got that, so pat yourself on the back if you were part of those 55%. 11 people said all of the above, and that is true. And I was doing a little internet search on just do it, and the top thing that came up is, and we've certainly noticed this, is people want to make things a just do it, so it's off their list, it's done, but maybe it's really not a just do it. So the comment we ask here, the team to consider is, are these things really a just do it? The change of staff, the documentation throughout the whole cascade, all registers. Is that really a just do it? Dispensing practices in the appointment system. Oh my, that could be a QI project in itself. So I think that's a common mistake, and then reading the internet this morning, that also reiterated that, is that people want to think of things as just do it, that this would be simple to do. But I saw one recommendation on the internet that said, actually, even if it is a just do it, do a quick DMAIC in your mind. So the tendency is to want to make something just do it, but I think those are more complex things that are going to really require a bit more work, and probably are not just do it. So here are some of the improvements that the team implemented, and I'm going to move on to the PDSAs. And I will ask you, and in the interest of time, I will read this for you, but test of change. PDSA, test of change, the same thing. Test related to causes identified in the analyze phase. Boy, if you identified something as a root cause or an important cause, then what do you need to do? You need to start testing changes to address that cause, right? Each test of change clearly identified and described. So I like to give a test of change a name. We're testing this. It has a title. It's clearly identified. I know how it was done. I have enough detail. And then do I remeasure after each PDSA? And do I put that on the run chart, and do I mark the run chart to know when that would be, when new PDSA? How many tests of change did I do? And when I looked at some evaluation of projects, and in the VA system, our government hospital system for our veterans, for our military veterans, they give a quantity and of whether, how, strong the project is. And you need 3 or more PDSAs to be an average project. So very important to do multiple tests of change and make them small. And then you've identified the actions for the next PDSA in this act phase. We know what you're going to test next, or how you're going to proceed. So those are some of the things to look for. I'm going to ask you to, what strikes you as you look at this PDSA, and just type into the chat box. Maybe that will be less intimidating, but is there anything that jumps out at you when you look at this PDSA? So this would be on AIM 1. It starts out being on AIM 1 to document viral load results. Anything catch your eye? Again, we're trying to learn today how to critique a presentation and a PDSA. So anything you would want to change in this PDSA, anything you would want to do differently, or do you love it? The writing is small, but that's a hint.
So Barbara, I don't know if you can close the comment box so that will enlarge the slide, the font.
I can make it bigger. Yes, I can.
Great, thank you.
Does that help?
Yes.
So I think what would just catch your eye at the very, when you first look at this PDSA, what catches your eye?
So Barbara, just to let you know, time check, it's 8:30 now.
Okay. All right. Well, I would, what I would hope that you would notice here is that basically there's a lot packed into one PDSA, and it actually says it's a small test of change. But this is not a small test of change. This talks about entering viral load results, which is aim 1, but then it goes on to high viral load and what you would do with the high viral load report and how you would report it all out. All good things, but too much in one PDSA. One PDSA is a small test of change. Maybe you're testing your sample, your register or something like that. So they did have, they do show a remeasurement after the PDSA, and they were able to go from 16% to 100%. And then they show us that they will adopt the project, but it's also a little hard to understand exactly what the change is. So those are some critiques on that. Too many things packed into one small test of change. All right, and then here is our data after the change. Okay, so from November, December, and January, this is when they're implementing those PDSAs. So what results did they get? So again, they give us the data, but I have one feedback here, and that is, wouldn't it be, they only looked at 25 cases. So really would be best once you've implemented your change to start looking at more. 25 was just a convenient sample for your baseline. Now they did say they had 500 per month, so maybe that was too many to look at. But I would encourage you to look at more going forward and try to look at everything once you've implemented the change, because you want to pick up subtle differences, subtle improvements. Once again, when the data was plotted, we used multiple lines, and we've already talked about that. Again, here we have multiple lines, but we do have the data table. And then this is the PDSA for the second aim. This is for providing care according to guidelines. So is there one thing that you would notice and provide feedback on in this slide? I'd love for you to type in. What do you notice about this? So this is the, they did 2 PDSAs. One was on aim 1. And you saw that it was multiple things compressed into one. And then here is the second PDSA. So based on what we've talked about, provide some critique for this PDSA. You can type it into the chat box. And Katie or Julie, if you could read those out for me. What feedback could you give this presenter? What questions would you want to ask? How would you want to understand this presentation? You can cheat, not really cheating, good cheating. Looking at your list here. Anyone typing into the chat box? Let me give you a hint. What do you notice in the study phase? What is missing in the study phase?
Liberty says the study part is not based on the data generated.
Exactly, exactly. Great observation. There is no data there. Although the team says the intervention was adopted with great conviction as the results were so outstanding, but there are no results. So perhaps they were left out or whatever, but the study phase always needs to include some type of remeasurement. And in this case, they would have been remeasuring their major metric. If it's a small PDSA, if it's a 1 day, 1 person, you can get feedback qualitative, doesn't have to be quantitative. The person who tried out the 1 checklist for the 1 day, the 1 nurse on the 1 shift can give you, they say this, you know, we need to tweak this. So it doesn't have to always be numbers, but there needs to be some sort of remeasurement, reevaluation, okay? The same critique as before. I don't know, I had to read to understand which aim they're working on, so it would be helpful to clearly identify the aim. It would be helpful to clearly identify, give it a title. We're testing X, because I read a lot of details, but I'm not exactly sure. It's not clear what they're testing. You know, maybe it's a new process, but usually you test small pieces of the process and then put the process together. Sometimes, as Liberty and I have discussed, you blow up a process and start a whole new process over again. And that's really not a small test of change. That's a big, big test of change, right? So I hope that you are feeling more confident about being able to critique these presentations. And then here we have the data for aim number 2. So this, is there anything that you would pick up on having data on aim number 2, cared for according to guidelines? And remember, this presentation was done in January. Anything that you might have a question about in this slide? You're honing your evaluation skills. You really want the questions that you ask your peers, help them hone their projects, help them make their projects better, help them to think about things they may not have thought about. So that's the beauty of a collaborative. So what might you point out to your colleague who was sharing this presentation? So I think Katie highlighted here in yellow, we have a different baseline number than we had in the previous slides. There's something even more important that I think you may want to point out to your colleague, and that is the way that we measure care according to guidelines. The way that we defined care according to guidelines was 3 EACs and repeat viral load within 4 months. So you would literally need 4 months to be able to even begin to see the effects of this change. That's why we moved it back and had a sub-aim that you could measure quicker and faster, and that would be just did people show up for their appointments, any appointment, EAC appointment, viral load appointment. But this really requires 4 months to even begin to see the effects of your change. So if we were meeting in January of 2020, we wouldn't actually have had 4 months to be able to see the effects of your change. So I suppose that this team was not probably aware of what we meant by fulfilling according to guidelines. That means you have to have 4 months to measure that. So again, that's something you want to think about and point out to your colleagues and help them understand the metric, understand the process. And then again, we have that same data presented with 4 lines. And then they actually did a very thoughtful thing of showing us how they lose patients over time as they move through each of the steps. And so that they took a cohort of 37 people. The numbers are a little confused in here, and the columns are maybe a bit not properly labeled, and we don't know the time frame. We don't know when did you start with these 37 people, and how long did you monitor them. So those are some things we'd like to ask, right? As the team is presenting, we'd say, well, you know, when did you start with these people? And if you had 26 received and 20 were positive, 20 were suppressed or not suppressed, and 2 were suppressed or not suppressed, then what happened to the other 4? So kind of number things, but also concepts. And then Katie drew another alternative way to look at this. And then aim number 3, they had not, of course, measured anything yet. And then just to point out, the 5S hadn't been done in January. And so they're actually using bar charts to present their baseline data and their progress on aim 1. But of course, what would we like to see? Not a bar graph, but type into the chat, how would we like to see data displayed? Not a bar graph, but is anybody there?
Liberty says run chart.
Run chart, exactly.
And Japheth.
Excellent, excellent. So those are the kinds of, you'd like to ask some probing questions, you'd like to clarify some misunderstandings. And so I think we'll jump out of that for now and stop sharing. So I think that given the time, we're going to wrap up. I had one more presentation that we could have looked at quickly to assess, but I don't think we'll take the time to do that right now. I know that it's been a little challenging to do this over Zoom, but I appreciate your patience today. I hope that with the tool and with the chance to kind of go through a case, that my goal is really that you're going to feel more confident looking at your own case. You're going to feel more confident providing comments on your colleagues' cases, and you're going to be able, by asking those probing questions, and people will get people to thinking, and it'll stimulate them, and we'll all understand the process better by really fine-tuning and honing each other's presentation. So I'm going to end there now. Are there any, I'm going to give this count to 7. Are there any questions or comments or concerns that you all may want to share?
This is Fiona from Parinyatwa. I've got 2 questions. I think I need help on how to calculate the number of eligible patients who are due for viral load, who are eligible for viral load. Suppose we have 4,000 patients and 200 have been on ART for less than 6 months. How do we come up with the number that is eligible? Then the second one, I just need clarity on the presentation to say which aims are we looking at? Because the elevator speech, the PDSAs are dependent on which aim we are addressing.
Wow, great questions, great questions. I'll take the second one first. We are addressing both aims. So it really helps if you just clearly, and this team did it, you know, this is aim 1, this is aim 2. So we're really working on both aims. So you want a PDSA for both aims. We did not ask for the voice of customer for both aims. We only asked for the voice of customer for aim 2. But other than that, we would like you to address both aims currently going. And then I will actually defer to Japhet to talk about the measurement of eligible. My understanding would be that anyone who's been on viral load for 6 months would come in that eligible. So it would be more than 1/3 of your patients on ARC. But Japhet, I am going to defer to you.
Okay, maybe before I tackle the question, I would love to hear from the coaches if we have the same understanding of the clients that are eligible for viral load. Anyone from the coaches who want to tackle this before I respond to Fiona's question?
Good afternoon,
thank you.
everybody. Hey, Japhet. Afternoon, everybody. Okay, so how I understand the question, or how to calculate clients eligible for viral load, was basically we're just looking at the entire cohort on at the facility. Let's say, for example, I've got 5,000 clients that are currently registered at my facility on ART. So to then calculate those that are eligible, I'm just going to subtract subtract the clients that have not yet reached the 6-month period for ART initiation. So probably depending on the period in time, I guess, because some clients would have already had the viral load collected. So it will probably be the number of clients that are on ART, that's 5,000, minus the ones that have not reached the 6-month period. So let's say, for example, we are in July now. So everybody that started ART from February up to now is not eligible. And then everybody else from January going backwards would be the eligible clients. And then I think we'd also need to also consider the clients that are eligible, that had a viral load already collected, that have got a valid viral load. So I think that's how I would collect it.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Jackie. We also have a different group of clients with a different way of eligibility criteria, that is pregnant and lactating women. So we have to factor in those clients, because for pregnant and lactating women, the inclusion criteria is kind of different. For the general population, yes, is from 6 months. Then yearly, those are the clients that are eligible for viral load. But in terms of the pregnant women, depending on whether they've just been initiated or they've been on ART, some it's on 3 months, some it's when they report at the facility. So these are some of the things that you have to consider as your inclusion or your exclusion criteria in terms of the clients that are eligible for viral load. But yes, thank you for mentioning that we have the 6 months and the ones that are eligible for 12 months. But in a given month or any given year, if clients have already been, if a viral load have been already collected, we need to exclude them so that we don't inflate the denominator of clients that are eligible for viral load. I don't know from my colleagues if I have left something on the inclusion and exclusion criteria for the clients that are eligible for viral load. Okay, over.
So thank you, Japhet. Would you be so kind as to work with the rest of the PMT and maybe send out some clarification and some guidance on how this would be calculated. So we would all be doing it in a standardized fashion. Because I'm not, how would you go about actually understanding who had had the test and who hadn't, who had had the viral load and who hadn't? And so perhaps you could send out some information on how to actually calculate that. Would that work?
Okay, let me put it on my assignments. I'll work on that.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Other questions? Otherwise, we'll go to Fortunate and she can share her information.
Okay, just a follow-up. This Fiona again. Just a follow-up to the eligible clients. I asked this question because for us, our numbers are kind of cyclic. So there are times when we have a very high peak of patients coming in, and then other months are a bit low. So it's like every month somebody is due for a viral load. So now that's why I was a bit confused to say, how do you calculate? Because suppose in January, we collect an average of 650 viral loads. In February, we collect 450. So if I'm doing the presentation in January, am I excluding everybody else and just looking at those who are due in January? And then in February, I have just to look at the numbers that are due in February, like that, from month to month. Or
so again, this has to be defined. Jeff, when you were deliberating with your group, we need to put a time frame. You know, so this is a time. Are we talking about average of past 6 months, or this current months, or again, we need to standardize, because otherwise we are comparing oranges with apples. So time frame also is also very important to factor into this.
Yeah, I hear you, Katie, because it fluctuates depending with the number of clients that you are looking at. Yeah.
Right. Whatever you decide to do is fine. We just need to standardize that and then communicate that to all the participants so that we will all do this in the same way.
Yeah, so I think it will be good now that we are moving on to our aim number 3. It will be good for everyone to be on the same page in terms of the definition of clients that are eligible for viral load. Yeah, thank you.
And that's the beauty of a collaborative, really, is that we all of a sudden today here, how many months are we in, and we realize we're not calculating a key metric in a standardized fashion. So that's really a great benefit of learning together. So thank you. Okay, other questions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That was quick counting. First, Fortunate, on to you.
So while we wait for Fortunate, I just want to point out that in the chat box, Dr. Agnes sent out a SurveyMonkey survey link to collect your feedback for today's webinar. And if it's too far back for you to find it, I'm going to resend the link so you will see in the chat box something from me. That's the same survey link that Dr. Agnes sent out. We want you to take the survey as soon as possible. But Fortunate, I believe she will also be sending the same link out in the WhatsApp group. So please do take that. We need your feedback to continuously improve our webinar. Over.
Yes, thank you. And just a reminder, we're meeting again next week, and then we have 2 weeks off. So we'll be back on August 5. And Fortunate, to you.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, but can you get rid of the side box? I don't know what that is. Can you just do the presentation mode so it will be bigger?
I'm failing to remove the side box. I hope you can see. So I just wanted to talk about the IHI course uptake. So if you look at this, what is on the screen, you'll find that the first part talks about the completion rate for facilities. So when you look at facilities, you will see that the facility which has done well in terms of the 7 mandatory courses is NMRL. 80% of their staff have managed to complete the mandatory courses. So when you look at this 80%, you will find that at NMRL, there are 5 people. So 4 of them have completed the 7 mandatory courses, and only 1 is yet to complete, but she has already done 4. And then Kwazana is second with 60%, followed by Heathcliff and St. Mary's, then Chugwiza. And then the rest of the facilities, and we are looking at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 facilities. We have 0%. This means that all the participants in those facilities have not managed to complete the 7 mandatory courses, although you find that in places like, for example, Mbare, although it's 0%, you find that there is only 1 person who has managed to complete 3 courses. So why there's a 0 is because we expected everyone to have completed the 7 mandatory courses by now. So I urge facility coaches and also facility teams, you are there on the meeting. Can you please work on completing your IHI courses? And then when you look at the partners, you also find that this data is for Northern Region facilities, that is Harare facilities only. The Southern Region is not included. So this also is the same for the partners. These are partners in the Northern Region. So when you look at the graph for the partners, you find that Zimtech is leading with 100% or all of their courses. They've done or completed the 7 mandatory courses, followed by PSI and ZACH. And then BRTI is at 75%. And then OFID is at 50%. And MOHCC is also at 50%. So maybe I can also ask the floor to comment. What do you think about these figures we are looking at?
Fortunately, there is one question from Jackie wanting to know the time period for this data. What is this current through?
Okay, so this data is for up to June, up to end of June, and first week of July, because I don't have the other data for all up to date. And for others, I know some people sent in their data saying they had completed, but I was also looking at the IHI courses spreadsheets where the data are actually written, because some of you didn't send me when the course was completed, so I didn't capture that.
No, but the spreadsheet sent from IHI is the ultimate proof, you know, whether you complete or not. We don't need to know whether you don't need to send it to Fortunate. We can tell from the spreadsheet.
Yes, so that's what I used. I used the spreadsheet. So that's where this
information. And it's cumulative, you know,
yes.
End of June, that reflects in the entire past year's completion.
You know, I think the IHI courses are really an important part of the curriculum, and it's really a scholarship. It's an honor to be able to have this because it's a costly undertaking. So I really appreciate our partners for pulling together to provide this for us. It's just an incredible opportunity. So I'd encourage you all to take advantage of it.
Hello, it's Dr. Junior. I want to make a comment. It's about those 9 facilities that haven't taken up any. Do we know why? If we try to talk to them, or perhaps their coaches if they are around, to find out what is the problem.
Yeah, I was about to ask the same question.
Can we take this offline? Can you reach out to those 9 sites, or because it's 9 o'clock now?
Okay, I only know of a few facilities that have, like Epworth and Epworth, they've highlighted that they've been having difficulties in registering. So I think Japhet is going to be assisting them. We're going to make plans to go to the sites together with Japhet so that we can see how we can assist them. But the rest of the other participants, there is no reason stated why they have not started on the courses, despite data having been availed to them to complete these courses.
So maybe you might need to actively try and extract information from them. Maybe we can do it, we can talk about it after this meeting, so that at least we'll be able to assist them. We can talk about strategies to how we can try to get that information from them, other than just maybe encouraging them without actually knowing where their issues are.
Right. Okay, well, if there is nothing else, it is 1 minute after 9. So I think we will say.
Sorry, Barbara.
Yes.
Maybe to just comment that yes, there are those challenges, but there's some improvement in terms of our course uptake. If you look at the I course uptake from the website, with effect from yesterday, we're now on 200 tickets that have been taken up out of the 500, but we still need to put more effort in taking up the courses.
And yes, we will continue to monitor this, and because this spreadsheet comes out every month, so we're going to do a reporting every month.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all again for your attention, for your participation, and I think we'll sign off from here then. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you next week at the same time.
Thank you. Make sure you take the survey.
Yes.
Thank you. Have
Thank
a
you.
good
Thank you
day.
so much
Thank
from
you,
the
bye.
group, Katie and
Thank
Barbara,
you. Bye.
for your
Thank you.
commitment and your patience with us.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Barbara, shall we stay online with Julie?
Yeah, sounds good. Fortunate, thank you for all your work.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Japhet.
Japhet.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dr. Junior.
And Barbara, you can manually remove other people so we can start our
I'm going to
debrief.
stop recording now.